The first Mishnah in the 5th chapter says, "Ba'asor ma'amoros nivra olam." The world was created with 10 expressions of God. If you read the narrative of creation, it speaks about the first day. What did God say? The first day, second day, third day. It goes through 7 days of creation. But yet, there were 10 expressions that were needed to bring about existence. When we speak about existence, we speak about the physical existence and the spiritual existence. There's the physical world and there's the spiritual world. There are 2 locations in the Talmud, in the Gemara, where the Gemara says same statement. There's a verse in Tehillim where David HaMelech says, "B'ko Hashem tzura lomim." We know that Yud K, the 2-letter word Yud K, which is one of the unpronounceable names of God, with Yud K, God formed the worlds. So the Talmud says, what do you mean he formed the worlds? Well, there's the physical world and there's the spiritual world. So with the letter Yud K or Yud Hey, he formed the worlds. Now, which world? Meaning every letter of the Hebrew alphabet has an innate spiritual energy. So the energy which exists within Yud and Hey, he formed the worlds. Terrestrial, spiritual. The physical world was created with the letter Hey. Why the letter Hey? If you look at the structure of the letter Hey, it is basically a dalid. You have a roof on it. On the right side, you have a leg, which is attached to it. And on the left side, you have a little leg, which is not attached to the roof. Now, what is the symbolism of the physical structure of the Hey? So the Gemara explains that man was endowed with free choice. Free choice means we're the only creation, the only species of existence which we can determine our fate, positive and God forbid negative. We could exercise control, restraint, and initiative based on what we choose to do in areas which are within our ability. You can't fly. That's not within your ability. But with whatever's within your ability, you have choice to be passive or to take initiative. And that's called free choice. Every other living species, it functions totally based on instinctive. Its DNA, the way it's created with a certain instinct, it cannot behave other than what the instinct dictates. A human being may have instinct, but we can override the instinct based on our intellect, our initiative, to take advantage, to be passive or proactive, whatever it may be. The letter Hey, from the right leg to the left leg, is wide open. If a person chooses to go with the free fall, wide open, you want to go to the abyss of evil, that's your choice. That's the symbolism and the structure of the wide opening between the right leg and the left leg. The world is wide open. If anybody chooses as he chooses. And what is the symbolism, the significance of that opening on the left side between the leg and the roof? That if one wants to come back, regardless to what degree he fell, and he transgressed and failed, he always has the ability to come back, which is known as tshuva. God always created a concept known as repentance. You could always come back. So the Talmud asks, well, why can't he come back the same exit as he exited? Let him re-enter as he exited. So the Gemara says, once you go out, you can't come back the same way, the same route. You have to take another route. Meaning you have to make many changes in your life to be able to come back. So therefore, you may have to change your social circle. You have to may change your location. As you may have to change your identity. You have an identity change. Because if you go and you play in that same playing field as you did before when you failed, you're never going to, those changes aren't going to happen. So you have to do a revamping, a refurbishment of your life And only as a result of that could you come back. So you take a new route back. You're not going out the same exit to re-enter the same exit you exited. You have to come through that tiny opening between the left leg and the roof. Okay? So the Ramak, Ramoshku Deviro, in his work, Talmud Dvar explains, the Gemara tells us, the Mokim Shabali Tshuva Omdin, where a Baal Tshuva stands, Afilu Tzadikim Gemara Einam Omdim, where a Baal Tshuva, a person is a repentant, the way he stands, the way God values his actions, even if tzaddik, a person who's tzaddik all his life, does not stand on that level. So he goes to explain why. Because exactly based on what the Gemara says, when, let's say, we read in Pirkei Avos at the beginning of the first chapter, Asu Siyog Torah. Everybody has to have his personal fences. Everybody has their weaknesses, and understanding our weaknesses, we have to take precautions, and we have to make fences. You know, they say, what makes good neighbors? A fence makes a good neighbor. That's what makes a good neighbor. What makes a good person to have control, not to cross lines, we have to make fences. Because if not, we cross those lines. And that is Asay Siyog LaTorah. You must make a fence to protect the Torah. Now, if you have certain highways, it says passenger cars only. What kind of guardrails do you need on that kind of highway? Sometimes you go up to the mountains, you see, you have a vertical metal post, and you have these wires, these cables, 3 cables soldered onto that vertical metal post. That's enough, because even if a car goes out of control, it crashes into it, that metal cable, those 3 metal cables will hold the car and not to go off the road. But let's say it's a highway that you have trailer trucks and Mack trucks. You understand? That guardrail, you need more than those 3 cables. You need serious girders which could withstand tremendous impact, because anything less than that, they're going through off the cliff. So the Ramak explains, a person basically is a tzaddik or a middle of the road person. He hasn't gone to the extreme, the negative. So basically he has control over his life, but we all vacillate. So a person who vacillates, some level of guardrail you need a fence. But let's say a person was an extreme sinner and he went into free fall and now he wants to come back. The fence, which is sufficient for the person, for the middle of the road person or the tzaddik, because there's nobody perfect, that fence is not sufficient for him. Not sufficient. He can't go to the end and say, well, I'll put up right at the edge, I'll put up a guardrail. If you're too close to the edge, no guardrail is strong enough to hold you back from your temptations, because of the level of conditioning in that context, it's not going to work. You're going straight through that. So what do you have to do? You have to come through at the very top. You have to distance yourself at a level that it's beyond arm's length. It's literally in the hinterlands where you used to be. And as a result of that, you're coming in on the very top. And you're coming in by the roof. You're pressed against the roof. So the level of fence that the Baal Tshuva needs, what he has to actually rein in on himself, and the level of restraint that he has, it's overwhelming. It's not comparable. It's beyond anything compared. There's nothing comparable to that. And since we have a principle of Lefum Tzara Agro, that based on initiative and the difficulty, and the more you sacrifice, the greater is the value of your action. Since the Baal Tshuva, you understand, it's not he has amnesia and he doesn't remember his past. All the skeletons are rattling in his closet. And he has to take these fences, extreme fences, otherwise he's going right back there. So because he's taking those extreme fences, those precautions, which are not necessary for the average person, therefore God values his level of sacrifice. He's willing to give it up to come back. Therefore, the location, the place the Baal Tshuva stands, even the tzaddik doesn't, because the tzaddik doesn't have that level of sacrifice because he never chose to condition himself so negatively as the person who's the Baal Tshuva. That's how the Ramak, Reb Moshe Kudaviro, explains the passage in the Gemara that where the Baal Tshuva stands, even a person who's a tzaddik does not stand for this reason itself. But initially, what is the basic concept? What does the hay display? That God created the physical world with the hay, the world is wide open for everyone. You choose as you do. You want to stay at the top? Stay at the top. You stay close to the top, you need a very slight fence because you're distant from where you should not be. But a person who's gone through that bottom and he fell out, as if the bottom fell out from him, and he, as we say, not sky's the limit. In the opposite direction is limitless. For him to come back, he has to come through the side entrance, through that tiny opening, and therefore to do that, it's not simple, and therefore the level of sacrifice and the level of commitment and what he has to deny himself is literally overwhelming, but God gives that person that ability. If he truly is sincere and wants to come back, God will assist him to come back. I always tell over the allegory, which is offered by Reb Simcha Zissel Ziv, who was known as the Alt of Kelim. And what is Siyata Dishmaya? The word is an Aramaic word. Siyata Dishmaya, it's Aramaic. Siyata Dishmaya, assistance from heaven. God, assistance from heaven. The Gemara tells us in one location specifically, a person wants to purify himself. You will merit divine assistance. God will help you come back. You not even come back unless you want to advance yourself, spiritually speaking. You'll have special divine assistance to achieve what you want to achieve if you're truly sincere in terms of your initiative to grow and advance. But if you want to sin, posano, God will not assist you in that. God says the door is wide open. You want to leave, you're welcome to leave. You can walk out the door. You want to walk off the plank and just fall, God forbid, to an area where you can be hurt or destroyed. God says, if that's your choice, that's your choice. But God doesn't assist you in that. To be able to advance yourself or come back, there's special divine assistance for that. Very special. Otherwise, it doesn't happen. So he explains, you'll probably remember the allegory he gives that also the Gemara tells us that to grow in Torah, to come upon the truth of Torah, you need special divine assistance. Because we're talking about its concepts which touch a realm which is not within the physicality of the human being. It's not within the ramifications and the effects go beyond the parameters of physical existence. So you need special divine assistance to come upon its truth. So he explains it with an allegory, what we call a mashal in Hebrew, that in the medieval times, they used to have contests. And if you'd win the contest, and it was always to display a certain prowess, a certain ability, a strength, a certain stamina. And if you were able to achieve that, you would win a purse of gold. So they had this ladder. The ladder had 1,000 rungs on it. And if you were able to ascend the ladder, come to the top rung, you won that purse of gold. And for years, tens of years, centuries, people tried to ascend the ladder. Once you reached rung 75, the ladder was blowing in the wind, and the level of strength you need just to hold on, it was beyond human ability. And people used to fall to their death. And people realized how dangerous it was. Once they reached a certain point and they felt that strength was ebbing, they immediately came down. They would not go beyond that, okay? But nobody understood there was a precondition before you ascended this ladder. You had to wear a belt with a large iron buckle. And no one understood why. But that was the precondition. For centuries, this belt already was centuries old. And finally, there was one person, and he says he's always dreamed to win that purse of gold. He's going to give it even at the cost of his life. And he climbs the ladder. He starts ascending rung after rung. He reaches rung 75, 76, and he feels if he doesn't go down now, he's falling to his death. But he says, doesn't make a difference. This is something he's committed to. He's going all the way from 78 to rung 1,000. It's an impossibility. How do you reach rung 1,000? It's not possible. And all of a sudden he pushes. He's 79. You're a fool. Where are you going? 80 to 1,000. Impossible. But the moment he hits rung 80, there's a magnetism which draws him all the way straight to rung 1,000. Nobody realized that you had to be within the magnetic field, and that's why he had to wear that iron buckle, that belt, because the moment you reach that level, the magnetic force was so strong, it attached to that buckle, it pulled you straight up to rung 1,000. Nobody realized it. That's exactly what Siyata D'Shmaya is. Within the human capacity, it's impossible. Impossible. You cannot. But if a person sincerely wants to come back or advance himself spiritually, which is not within the human capacity, God says, I will assist you. But you have to take initiative. You take sufficient initiative, God's there. At first, we have many setbacks to discourage us, and that's the evil inclination. And you give up, but the person doesn't give up. And some people don't, and they keep pushing and pushing. You know, after a day's work, you're tired, you're supposed to study. And despite your fatigued state, you go and you force yourself and you study. All of a sudden, you regain a new energy and you condition yourself. So he said, well, that's called conditioning. It's much more than conditioning. Because it's interesting, when a person comes to study, all of a sudden, his nose is touching the book. All of a sudden, he gets a call, you know, it's the 50th reunion of class 1962. He has all the energy in the world to stay out to 3 a.m. When it came to study, you can't keep your eyes open. Why all of a sudden for reunion 1962, whatever it is, DeWitt High School, you're there. What's going on? The answer is because the Yetzer Hara, he's putting sleeping pills in your coffee. Despite the caffeine, you can't keep your eyes open. But this, you're drinking water and you have all the energy in the world. What's going on? The answer is, if you want to do the right thing, it's not so easy. But if you demonstrate, despite that, you push yourself and you reach that rung, which is at a certain level, God immediately comes in and gives you that extra infusion of strength and ability to gain clarity and a momentum, and you have the ability to ascend. And that's what life is about. Life is the life, you know, we always speak about the school of hard knocks. Person who lived the life as hard knocks. Sometimes a person, after he has too many hard knocks, he despairs, gets depressed, becomes pessimistic, he gives up. Other people, they just to the contrary. They learn many valuable lessons, and because of those lessons, they go forward and they eventually succeed. Only because of that. They have that tenacity, that ability, they don't back down. Because once they set their minds, they believe in themselves, they go forward. But when it comes to spirituality, it's more than believing in yourself. It's believing in this principle, which was given at Sinai, that Abol-Etar Messiah. If you want to truly purify yourself, you want to advance spiritually, but you take the initiative, God will assist you. That's the concept of Siyata D'Shmaya, of divine assistance. You know, it's very interesting. What is the difference between the Jewish people and all the nations of the world? A person, I'll give you the equivalent case. A person wants to travel the world. You know, we don't realize the value of red lights, green lights. One time there was a power outage and there were no signals to indicate when you could go. It was chaos. When there was power, even though you had lights in your cars, who goes first? It was chaos. We don't understand the value of that system, traffic system, to tell you when you could go, when you can't go. At one time, if a person wanted to travel, there were no roads, there were no road maps, you had nowhere. You had the North Star, and somehow, and you, besides being subject to danger, where did you know where to begin, where to go? You had no idea. So person, you have this vast world, and a person says to one person, you know, I have a road map. And you follow this map, it has all the indicators exactly to identify whether going east, north, south, west, and directions and certain locations. I'm offering to you. But you know, you have to study that map well to be able to travel that way. And you have to become, firstly, you have to become literate. And you have to learn how to read a map. And you can't be distracted. You have to be focused. And you offer this map to many people. They say, no, not interested. Not interested. It's too complicated. I'll rely on my own instinct. And one person who was wise, and he saw the value of understanding that every opportunity that exists in the world, if you know exactly how to get there, you have that map relative to this other situation where they don't. They're in a maze. This person knows how to get out of that maze. He understands the infinite value of that roadmap, and he embraces it. At Sinai, God says, I got a narrative. It's a roadmap. It gives you the ability to have every sense of every nuance of who you are and how to climb that ladder. And you're not climbing something where you're coming to a dead end. And you're not going to allow to be deceived. It addresses many of your conflicts of interest, to take control, to spiritualize yourself, to have an acuity in many areas, to arrive where you're supposed to arrive, and maximize on opportunities. The world said, something doesn't fit our lifestyles. Too complicated. It infringes on what we believe is what we want. It was offered to the Jewish people. They said, if God is offering it, the creator, nobody knows the road system better than he does. And if he's giving the roadmap, how to traverse this existence, Nasa v'nishma, we're embracing it. We want it. Just tell us what it is. We're there. But we want that map. That's exactly what it is. So a non-Jew, he's limited to the 7 Noahide laws. Behave like a civilized human being. Don't kill, don't murder, don't steal, don't commit adultery, don't blaspheme God, who's the creator, don't do idolatry, don't steal. Okay? But life is much more than that. Life is much more than behaving like a civilized human being. Because the conflicts of interest, we cross many lines, which actually we are stealing, we are killing, and we're doing many other things. And because we don't have a sufficient sense of right and wrong, even justify paganism, which is idolatry. Because the whole world is all paganistic or Trinity, whatever it is. But the Jewish people, there's no aspect of our life which God doesn't direct us and hold our hand. What are you permitted to look at? What are you permitted to eat? What time is your time and what time is not your time? And you have to live within that context of time as I dictate you should live within that time. That's what we have. I always say, the world itself, we had the pandemic. We've been experiencing for a year and a half already. Disastrous. People dying, people's lives being confined, being literally entombed. And literally, the suicides have reached proportions of epidemic proportions. The psychiatrists, psychologists, the business is booming. I have a good investment. There's an IPO. Psychiatrists are starting a company. There's unlimited people who need all kinds of therapy and psychiatric and the pharmaceuticals, the medications, they can't manufacture quick enough. That's how much people have to be medicated. You cry for this. And you say, what's going on over here? The world is going off the cliff. But if you're a Jew and you're a believing Jew and you understand that nothing happens unless he allows it to happen, and it's part of his program, you understand? We have to do what we have to do. Whatever's within our ability, we do. Something which is out of our ability, we can't do it. God is running the world. God is running the world. We pray for things should be better with whatever's within our grasp or understanding. But you know something? Thank God we have a God. And because thank God we have a God, we understand who God is and who we are and what's our position in existence and value in existence. All we have to do is to do what we have to do. Whatever is within our ability, we do. What's beyond our ability, we can't. We only want to do what he wants to do. But what's going on? It's not part of my ability. It's not within my capacity. He knows. And if he knows, it's okay with me. Because whatever God does, it's only for the best. God forbid a person has to have a tumor excised. It's painful. If you don't know what's going on, it seems to be you're cutting a piece of flesh out of the person. There's growth, but you don't understand. If you understand what the doctor understands, the surgeon understands, and why you have to go and take out every trace of whatever that is, that gives life to the person. But who understands that? The person who has the medical background and the diagnostic ability or the tools to evaluate that, he understands that. What is the average person, though? He knows nothing. It's all based on relying on the credibility of the doctor. Basis for everything we have goes back to Sinai. Goes back nearly 4,000 years, where he openly communicated with every one of us. And we know he is the creator. He has the credibility, regardless of how many valleys we've been in, the peaks and valleys in life. But factually, we begin from a factual existence. And God told us, we just read it yesterday, if you follow my statutes, you committed to my Torah, and you toil, and primary is your spirituality, and the material is secondary. It's only to facilitate the spirituality, everything will be perfect, beyond perfect. The bounty will be uncontentable bounty. But if not, you go south, it goes all the way south. And then you'll hear the music. That was yesterday's reading. That's known as the Tochacha. Those are the curses, God forbid. And they repeat themselves many times throughout history. And we got rattled. But again, the Jew, because there's no aspect of our life which is not subject to free choice. And those areas, God gave us a way to deal with those areas. What do you eat? It's like a person has a nutritionist, one of a kind. And every day he sits with him before every meal. And before he opens his mouth with food in that mouth, he advises him what is nutritious and what's detrimental to his health. Another person, he has an expense account, goes into a restaurant. Nobody tells him what, when. They put that trough before him, the feed aid before him. They put him that menu, and his head goes straight into that. He doesn't even know what he's eating, what he's not eating. What's good for him, what's detrimental to him. He doesn't know. The Jew, God says, no, it's this and not that. And even it's this, it has to be prepared a certain way. Otherwise, it's detrimental to you. It has to be ritually slaughtered. The blood has to be extracted. You can't, when you prepare it, you can't have milk and meat. He gave us every aspect to enhance our being, which is our essence, which is our soul. He is right on top of us. But you understand, God is not forcing anybody to do anything. That's called free choice. You do as you choose, but you understand, if you do as you choose, either if you succeed and do the right thing, you really have that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. If God forbid you don't do the right thing, as they said, you hear the music, but it's not music that you want to really hear. But you believe at this point, things are the way you want, but ultimately someday, as it says in Pirkei Avos, if you consider three things, you'll never come to sin. Where you come, where you're going, and before who you will stand. Where do you come from? Every human being, every living creature, from a putrid droplet of semen. Where are you going? To the locations of the maggots and the worms. And before who you will stand in judgment, before the King of Kings, God himself, and every aspect, every nuance of your life is recorded, and you have to deal, and you'll be confronted with that reality. Okay, that's free choice. So the choice of a Jew is within another context than a non-Jew. Non-Jew, it's 7 no-hide laws. But you say, well, it's easy. It's not so easy. Because there's so many aspects that affect a person's life that ultimately you're going to cross those lines. The Jew, based on the whole narrative life and prescription, if you follow it, you're sensitive to where you shouldn't go. But if you violate it, then you're not sensitive. And the liability is very serious. It's interesting, the Amidah is divided into 3 parts. The opening 3 blessings is acknowledging who God is. God is Eloki Avram, Eloki Yitzchak, Eloki Yaakov, the God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Great, powerful, awesome, sustains life, resurrects the dead, supports the falling, heals the sick. You're holy, your names are holy. Those who praise you are holy. Those are the first 3. Then we have all the supplications. Intelligence, discretion, healing, forgiveness, whatever it is, straight through. Finally, the closing blessings, we give thanks to God, acknowledging what he did for us. What is the first acknowledgement of thank you? Modim anachnu loch. We give thanks to you. Sha'atohu Hashem Elokeinu. That's the first, that you're our God. You know what that means? Person that has Havdil Elef Havdolos, the discern endless, infinite times over. Bill Gates, He's your buddy. Whenever you pick up the phone, he answers. You need a cash advance, gives it to you. Whatever you want. Invite you to his house. He has one in Biafra. He has one in Central America. Wherever he put in the sanitation system, he has a home there. You could visit whenever you want. The man thinks this is on top of the world. God, I thank you for that relationship with Bill Gates. L'havdil. We give thanks to you that you're our God, the creator of existence, the infinite being, the one who's the source of good in the absolute sense. He chose us. He is our God. You know what that means? That's the first thank you. Then we speak about the miracles and the goodness and the favors and the kindness. What's first and foremost? Recognize, where do we stand? We say Oleinu. We speak about Oleinu Shabeach Lador Hakol. We give praise to the master of everything. What is the praise? We're not like the nations of the world. Our lot is not like their lot. Who are we? We bow and prostrate ourselves before the King of Kings, who created heaven and earth, everything. That's what it's all about. And that's where it started at Sinai. And it's only due because of Avram Avinu. Avram, the founding patriarch of the Jewish people. He had a genetic profile. And Yitzchak expanded it. And Yaakov formally actualized it in the most perfect context. And every one of us are beneficiaries. And we all have that genetic profile. Therefore, when we came to Sinai, we said, Nasa v'nishma, we accepted unequivocally what God offered because we had that innate sense of who God was. The world didn't have that. They were off into the paganism. They tried to destroy Yaakov. They tried to destroy Yitzchak. They tried to destroy Avram. They didn't succeed. Because when you have as your backer God, which they didn't understand, Avram may have been a lonely individual, but Avram was the Ivri. What is Avram Ivri? So the Talmud says he was on one side of the world and he took on the world single-handedly. And he was the victor. How could one person be a victor over a whole world? Because if you understand who Avram's backer was, then you understand why he actually impacted the whole world. If you ever think about it, that in terms of civilization, until recently, the Far East never existed within Western civilization or within the Middle East and the Europe. Now, who is the founding father of humanity, other than the Chinese and the Indians? You know who they were? Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The Edomites, the Romans, are descendants of Yitzchak. Edom, Esav. He's the patriarch, the founding father of the Edomites, the Romans. The Arabs, Avram's son was Ishmael. But he also had a son, Yitzchak, who ultimately, his most special son was Yaakov. So you have the Jewish people, the Muslims, and the Western civilization, Eastern Europe, all that. These all come from these three individuals. Could you imagine? The whole world. The main essence of existence until recently. The other thing where they were tucked away, we didn't even know they existed. They had no impact on our lives. It's unusual. It's almost impossible. Three individuals are able to bring about such a surge of existence. You know why? What is the purpose of existence? There's a balance between good and evil. It's a struggle. Who's the most extreme level of represents evil in existence? Who destroyed the second temple? The Romans, the Edomites. There was a strife, a struggle between Yaakov and his brother Esav. In utero, they were ready. In the womb of their mother, there was agitation. And when Rivka, their mother, went for reading from Shem, the prophet, what did he tell him? Shnei goyim b'vidnech. They're two nations in your womb. And when they emerge, two ends of the spectrum. They cannot coexist, these two entities. If one rises, the other one falls. But ultimately, Yaakov's descendants will be the victors. That's what we finish every morning before the Ishtabach. We say, V'olo b'shim har Tzion, lishbor es har Esav. At the end of time, the saviors will come to Har Tzion, lishbor, to judge Mount Har Esav, Har Seir, v'hoisel Hashem amlucha, and God will be coronated and recognized as the king of the world. V'hoyashem lemelech kol oretz. God will be the king over everything. But again, that's what it's all about. So we're talking about choice, free choice. Life is choice. There's no moment of our lives. Every moment, a person is given so many years to live. You're meant to live 80 years, 3 weeks, so many days, so many hours, so many seconds. Why are you given that degree of time? Because you need that time, those moments, to address development of your spirituality. That means every minute of that existence is in the balance of choice. How do I use that? How do I utilize that time? How do I infuse it with value, that value should touch my spirituality? That's choice, every moment. So unless you have a keen understanding, firstly, about your purposes, you're in the dark. You're groping in the dark. You don't even know where to go. You don't even know where to begin. And even when you know where to go. But the question is, am I interested in going there? Do I want to invest the way God says I should invest? Because I have all kinds of whisperings in my ear saying differently, which is called evil inclination. And you have to study sufficiently. And you have to take precautions. And you have to be responsible. That's all part, that's what we call Judaism. And that's the objective of existence. So now we're going to talk about the 10 utterances through which God brought existence into being. Although we only find 7, God said, let there be light. Let the waters, let the waters separate the upper waters, let upper waters, lower waters, let the waters gather, let there be vegetation, let there be life teeming in the water, so on and so forth, till man was created. And then we have the 7th day, which is God completed creation. So there's 7. So the Talmud says, no, the first few words, Bereshis bara Elokim, though the 3 other utterances alluded there, so the 10 utterances. So the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says, as God created, the extent or the process of creation was over a 7-day period, and there were 10 utterances, God could have said, let it be, let it all be. In one instant, all existence would have happened. There's nothing beyond God's ability. Why did God choose to bring about existence through 10 expressions? He could have made one statement, let it be. So that's what the first Mishnah in the 5th chapter speaks about. Why is it important for us to know that God created the world with 10 utterances? Does it really make a difference? And it would have been 3 or 5 or 1. What is that to teach us? God could have created existence with one expression. That the Torah goes out of its way to tell us, no, there were 10. Although he could have done 1. What does that teach us? What do we draw from that? And the lesson is such a profound lesson. Eli Paramin or Rishoyim, that there should be culpability to the evil. So to destroy the evil, to give them a greater level of culpability and liability, because they destroy the world that was created with 10 expressions. We'll see in a moment how difficult this mission is. I mean, God created the world with more expressions, so when the evil fail, there should be a greater level of liability and culpability to them. Does that make sense? I mean, it says, Rachma v'kol masav. God's mercy is on all his creations. So he creates a setting in a way with a background that people, when they fail, they should be more culpable. Why does he want them to be more culpable? He wants them to be meritorious, not more culpable. But it's so that the evil, when they fail, they should be more culpable. V'litein sochor letzadikim, and to give due reward to the righteous. Shemekaymis olam shnim b'asar mamaros. They maintained the world that was created with 10 utterances. So the way to answer this on a simple level, which I'm going to say something, name it a Maharal of Prague differently, that whenever the representation of good and bad, there's a balance. Now, the Ramchal, Rav Moshe Chaim Luzzatto says, why did God create evil? Why? God created the evil so there should be a context of choice. Evil was created that you should not do evil. Because if evil didn't exist, a person naturally does good. So God created evil, that's part of the balance. Now it's up to you to make a choice. Where are you going? You're going to the right or to the left? So the right is only right because there's a left. Because if there are no dimensions, there's only one, so you function within that dimension. So the evil exists only because there's a good that you're supposed to choose and you reject the evil. And that gives value to the good. I'd once said, the Gemara tells us that on Purim, which we celebrate the existence of the Jewish people, there was a decree to annihilate every man, woman, and child. And during this hiatus between the first and second temple period, by a man by the name of Haman, who was a descendant of Amalek, and he wanted to annihilate every man, woman, and child. And then, because Mordechai and Esther, who was the queen, it was unknown that she was a Jewish woman, God brought about a miracle. And there was a change of events almost instantaneously, and the Jews were seen as the heroes and the most special, and they were given permission to destroy the Amalekites up to a point. That's what it's about. So there's a mitzvah to drink on Purim to a point where you cannot discern between blessed is Mordechai and cursed is Haman. To that degree. So the way it's understood simply, that you get so intoxicated that you say, God forbid, cursed is Mordechai and blessed is Haman. That's what it means, not to discern between the good and evil. So the way it's explained, why? We find that Hanukkah, how do we celebrate Hanukkah? We don't feast. The mitzvah Hanukkah is to light the candles to commemorate the miracle that there was only one vial of oil to burn. The day it burned 8 days. And we give praise to God. Now, what was the miracle of Hanukkah? If the Jews would have agreed to be Hellenized, the Greeks revered the Jews. They revered their wisdom, their ability. It's only because we were opposed to paganism. We weren't willing to submit to idolatry. That was the crux of the problem. And therefore, there was a war. So what is the miracle of Hanukkah? We're celebrating our spirituality, not our physicality. Purim, you could have been a pagan, you could have been an atheist, you could have been a heretic. Didn't make a difference to Haman. If you came from Jewish descent, he did not want you should exist. So what's the miracle of Purim? It's our physicality. Has nothing to do with our beliefs, our intellect. It's who you are. Hitler, Yamach Shemo. It didn't make a difference who you were as a Jew. You could have been the greatest contributor to Christianity and to the arts and to the sciences. If you're a Jew, Hitler didn't want you to exist. He will annihilate you. He will remove you off the face of the earth. And that's exactly was the story of Purim. So now that the miracle happened, what do we celebrate? We celebrate our physicality, that we physically exist. To celebrate physicality means to emphasize that point. It's like intellect doesn't matter. So even if you reach a point, you say, God forbid, cursed is Mordechai, that's not what it's about. To emphasize the point, it's our physicality, that we exist as a physical people. That's what we celebrate on Purim. That's the way it's explained, except I'm explaining it differently. Now, when a person says, blessed is good, blessed is Mordechai, and cursed is Haman, which is evil, why should Haman be cursed? Why? And why should Mordechai be blessed? The answer is because Mordechai is good and Haman is evil. But why is evil evil? Evil is only evil because there is such a thing as good. And good is only good because there's such a thing as evil. But if there be one and not the other, that's what existence is. It's only contrasting one to another, therefore the other is seen in the context that it is. A person has to reach a level of understanding and depth and internalization. Sometimes if you reflect on certain things, when you say, blessed is Mordechai, automatically you're saying, cursed is Haman. Even though you didn't verbalize and you didn't articulate it. But if Mordechai should be blessed, that means anything which doesn't conform and reflect what Mordechai exists, it should be cursed. So you don't have to say Haman should be cursed. You don't have to say it. When you say one, you're saying the other. And we say, cursed is Haman. Why? Because since there's such a thing as good, and this is contradictory to that, it should be cursed. You don't have to say, blessed is Mordechai. Just by understanding and fully grasping what it means, cursed is Haman, at that moment you're saying, blessed is Mordechai. But not that you're saying, God forbid, Mordechai should be cursed and Haman should be blessed. That's not what we're talking about. So the whole concept of choice is there's a represent good and evil. And God created the evil that you should choose to do good and reject evil. That's its value, not that you should be drawn to it. And that's the challenge. And that's what it's all about. Now, you come to this world, and the world is composed and comprised of something which borders on the infinite. Now, figure it out. Figure it out. You know, you say something. When we talk about finding a needle in a haystack, you know, that's an understatement compared to figure out what this world's all about. It's not possible. How do you figure what it's about? It had to start somewhere. Even paganism, it's very interesting. Adam had 3 sons. He originally had Cain and Abel. Cain kills Abel. Adam, after he was created 130 years later, he has a son by the name of Seth, Shais. He's a tzaddik. And he has a son. Shais, of Adam's 3 children, was the most perfect. He was a tzaddik. Shem, who was the most special son of Noach himself was the descendant of Shais, not a descendant of Cain. He was a descendant of Shais, the tzaddik. Who do you think introduced idolatry to existence? The son of Cain or the son of Shais? You would say Cain was a murderer. As it says, he was a manufacturer of weapons to kill, to hunt, whatever it was. Shais was a holy man. He was a man of God. And yet, whose son introduced idolatry to existence? The son of Shais, not the son of Cain. You'd think Cain's a bad guy, kills his brother, couldn't care anybody about himself. He writes his own script. No, the one who wrote the script is the son of Shais. Being brought up in such a holy home. How do you take that path to deny God as the creator with such a orientation, such a atmosphere, such an understanding and education? But he's the one who assumed the position. No, it's paganism. What's paganism? Paganism is God created the world. They agree. They don't deny that. But God being the creator, being the infinite being, he created spiritual forces. And they are angels that were created to oversee various aspects of existence. God gave over the power to each one of these angels to be responsible for a certain aspect of existence. And he removed himself from this existence. Why? Because God, because of his dimension of being infinite, he's not involved with the minutia of existence. He's a creator, ex nihilo. But existence functions based on these multiple array of powers called angels, which are deities. And you worship the deity. And if you worship the deity, you sacrifice to the deity, human sacrifice, whatever it is, the deity will respond. And if you don't, it punishes you, it withholds and reacts. That's paganism. Cain, he was a guy, I'm using the word, killed his brother. He had such greed, the world wasn't big enough for both of them. He didn't want partners. So how do you get rid of your partner? Killed him. Now that's who got rid of his partner. God now, 130 years later, Adam fathers a son, Shais. Holy man, imbued with belief, one of a kind. And he raises his son with this belief. The son says to his father, Father, I understand what you're saying, but if God is a creator, and that's his dimension, you mean he's involved with the minutia of creation, of existence. Does it really matter to him what I eat, how I eat, provide my food and my health, my digestive system, and maintain the animals and the insects and the creatures and all the ecosystems of existence? Doesn't make sense. What makes more sense, that he created the hosts of heaven, which are angels, and he gave over that to them. That they should be the ones to oversee and function of existence is based on what they do, has nothing to do with God. That's the basis of idolatry. And that's paganism. That's the paganism. And that was the prevalent understanding. Noah comes and he tries to convince the people that if they continue on this path, the world comes to an end. And that was the ark. They didn't listen. God destroys the world. Adam had 3 sons. One was a tzaddik, one was evil, and one was a middle-of-the-road son. Shem was the special son, similar to his father. Avram, the founding patriarch of Jewish people, descends from Shem. And he was born into a pagan world. There was no trace of God. But Avram, due to his quest for truth, he came upon God. And he's the founding father of the Jewish people. And he took on the world single-handedly. And he was the victor. They couldn't destroy him as much as they did, as much as they attempted to. And he had a son Yitzchak. And again, his brother Yishmael tried to destroy him. And others tried to. Then there was a Yaakov. Esav tried to destroy him. His father Lavan tried to destroy him. Did not succeed. We went to Egypt. 70 individuals. The Egyptians tried to destroy us through the bondage. We became pagans. What happened after 210 years? We emerged as a spiritual people who ascended, and the 50th day we're at Sinai. And we said, Nasa v'nishma. We embraced the Torah. But that was the choice. Endless choices every step of the way, every moment of that existence. History, even though it seems to be years, centuries, millennia, but every detail, every moment of every moment is provided and willed by God because it has a value, has a purpose. And God has his own script. And the script is 10 expressions. The world was created through his 10 expressions. Now I'm going to tell you what the Maharal of Prague says. He says something phenomenal. He says, in numbers wise, we speak about units. If you have 9 items, 9 is comprised of 9 ones. 10, it may be comprised of 10 ones, but 10 is a unit. It's a cohesive entity, 10. If God created the world with, let's say, 1 expression or 5 expressions, you know something? One thing has nothing to do with another. There's no indication of anything. 1. How do I draw from that there is a purpose in creation? That things which seem to be disparate, unrelated, are really one. How do you see the picture? You can't. But if God created the world with 10 expressions, why did he choose the number 10? Because 10 means every one is part of that 10. That means things which seem to be unrelated are really part of the same entity. I'll give you an example. We speak about a quorum, what we call a minyan. 10 Jews. One man is a rocket scientist, astrophysicist, physicist. Another person is a lawyer. Another person is an accountant. Another person is a sanitation worker. Another person is whatever is. And they look different. They have different states of health. But what's the common denominator that connects them all? They're all Jews. And because they're all Jews, they are 10, one cohesive entity. They are an entity of 10. Even though it's 10 individuals, but because they have a certain level of representation, which is the same representation, they're all connected, and they are representation. They are the microcosm of Jewish people. So therefore, God created the world with 10 expressions. So as much as you believe or think that it doesn't make sense and that everything's unrelated to anything else, by seeing the 10 and understanding that there are 10, everything is somehow connected to everything else. That's what 10 represents. So if there wouldn't be 10, you can't blame the Russia. Total confusion. What am I supposed to see? You look at the script, it's beyond comprehension. But if you look at the script and the script has 10 expressions were about the script, that means somehow all this not understandable script has a meaning, has a purpose. It's not just random. Everything's connected. So if it's so obvious that that is the reality, how do you turn your back on it? Well, I think it doesn't make sense. But if there's 10, there is some relationship. Everything, this is a unit. Well, I choose to say it doesn't. You can choose whatever you want to say, but you turned your back on it. Because you turned your back, therefore there's liability. If there was less than 10, there's no liability. You can't be blamed because there's no way for you to even begin understanding that seemingly all these separate parts, which are unrelated to one another, have no relationship to one another. God created the world with 10 expressions to establish this reality that they do have to do with one another. Therefore, why don't you draw from that? And you should have investigated it. And if you would have followed that road, you would have come to an understanding of the reality, but you chose not to. But the tzaddik who did fully understand, and as they said, it opened his eye to investigate, and therefore he pursued that path, he's deserving of reward because he saw it correctly. He didn't allow his conflicts of interest or the difficulty of developing that to deter him and interfere, and he became the tzaddik. So the 10 is to give the Russia a level of culpability. He can't say, it's not my fault. It is your fault. Because there was enough there to see that you should have pursued it. The tzaddik, to give him reward. Because when he saw it, he took advantage of that. And he saw it and he pursued that path. And that's exactly what the Mishnah is saying. He could have created one, but it wouldn't have given away the answer. It wouldn't have given you the direction. It wouldn't have given you the entry point. 10 immediately is the entry point. That's it. The Russia, now you're culpable. The tzaddik, that's why you're deserving. And that's the balance. And it's not easy. Ramchal, Rabbi Tzaddik writes in The Path of the Just, the world is a minefield. A minefield. And if you don't have that map, how to go through that minefield, to be able to come out at the other end in one piece or alive, it's miraculous. And it's a minefield. And we don't even realize. When you have the roadmap, which is the Torah, and you have a conditioning, and you're raised, and first the child's 8 days old, circumcised, which is opens all the abilities, the spirituality of the child, the potential, and the parents educate him, orient him, give him an orientation. He becomes an adult, and he continues. He's committed to that script, to that prescription of life. Now he has a sense of what's opportunity and what's disastrous, what's catastrophic. You know, it's like a person. It's known fact that hand gliding, These people jump out of planes. There's a statistic. You read that statistic, it's something you don't want to do. If you want to live, well, you never know. You could be crossing the street, a person can be hit by a bus or by a car. You go in the plane. It's true. There are no guarantees to anything. But still, as a responsible human being, you're supposed to try to live more responsibly than less responsibly. So why does the guy go hand gliding? Because that desire, that adventure, that thrill somehow doesn't allow him to appreciate the danger of where he's going. And that's what life's all about. We have so many conflicts of interest. But a person who's raised in a certain way, that life has infinite value, something that if you have an infinite opportunity, do you take a chance to jeopardize it for a thrill? You don't give it up for a thrill. But let's say you don't see life as have infinite value. Life is all thrills. More affluence, more pleasure, more this. I think that thrill is the equivalent of what that's all about. But if you understand, life is not the pleasure. Life is a means to an end. And it's something which has relevance to the infinite. Whatever exists, the more you clarify that, there's nothing in competition with that. It can be the greatest thrill in your life. God forbid. But if you understand it, see it, internalize it correctly, you don't give away the store for nonsense. For something which is less than minutia, which is insanity. And you see it as that. Somebody says, a person's worth $5 billion. And I know, Mr. So-and-so, I know you like grass-fed cattle and that steak. It'll cost you $1 billion. Because I know you enjoy it. The man looks at you, are you out of your mind? Do you understand what $1,000 is? Do you understand what $100,000 is? But I know the way you enjoy it. Yeah, if a person's truly an addict, he's addicted that he loses his sense of what's rational behavior. He jumps out years ago they had LSD. People, they took LSD and they walked out the window. They thought they were walking on air. And somehow it was going to hold them up. No, I'm not on LSD. You got this small guy here. That's what it's about.
Oh, there's two people in the back.
Nachi, silence it, please. Nachi. And that's exactly what it's about. But if you see it, 10 utterances, the 10 commandments. Why aren't the 5 commandments? 10, same idea. 10 indicates that every one is complementary to the other. 5, we don't see it. 10 it is, because 10 is a unit. 5 is 5 ones. They may not be related to one another. But 10 is. 10 plagues. But this is just randomly. 10 plagues came upon Egypt. 10. When Yaakov, I pointed out, when Avram sent Eliezer to find the wife for Yitzchak, who was the future matriarch, the Torah makes it a point, he sent 10, he went with 10 camels. Laden with the wealth. Why 10? Why is it important for us to know what the number is? Because what does the 10 indicate? The 10 goes back, this is to address the 10 utterances of existence. This is to address the objective, this purpose. The purpose is, if there's a patriarch, you need a matriarch to produce the future patriarch and have another matriarch. And that's what happened. And these are the founding fathers of the Jewish people. This is the foundation. We're going to stop here today, to be continued. Everybody have a good day. We have Daf Yomi at 11 o'clock with God's help.
Take care, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.